Ecosystem and species protection. When one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world. John Muir. Just think about that for a second. As humans, I think sometimes we forget that we are not the only ones living on this planet, that we do have to share it with creatures of different shapes and sizes. Even though we can't live without these creatures, sometimes we take advantage of them. And I know some species you might think are incredibly harmful or annoying and could have no use in our ecosystem, or any ecosystem for that matter. But they were put on this earth in the position they are for a reason, whether it benefits us or not, which I will delve into a little bit later in this presentation. Speaking of ecosystems, what is an ecosystem? Eco means nature or environment. One could infer that the word ecosystem means environmental system or a system that has to do with the environment. A geographic area where biotic and abiotic factors work together to create life. Abiotic factors are non-living factors such as rocks, temperature, and humidity, and biotic factors are living factors such as plants, animals, bacteria, and other organisms. They can vary in size. They can range in sizes as small as tide pools to ecosystems as big as the jungle. Each and every one of these ecosystems contains their own unique group of abiotic and biotic factors it needs to thrive. Food chains. With these ecosystems, the abiotic and biotic factors will work together to create food chains. For example, in the Kalahari Desert, wildebeests eat the grass, and then the lions eat the wildebeests, and then after the lions die, the hyenas eat the lion carcass. The hyenas are what are known as scavengers. This means that they eat the leftovers of the predatory animals. The predatory animals in an ecosystem are usually at the top of the food chain and are usually carnivores such as lions, bears, and great white sharks. These animals eat the animals classified as prey, which means that they are the weaker animal. This breaks down into three categories: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Herbivores are the animals that eat plants, also known as the producers. Carnivores are the animals that eat meat, and omnivores are animals that eat both meat and plants. There are also different kinds of relationships within an ecosystem. There is predation, where one animal wins and the other one loses. This can be seen when a lion eats a gazelle. The lion benefits, but the gazelle doesn't. Competition is where both lose. An example would be between lions and cheetahs, both hunting gazelles, having them both lose as they are both decreasing each other's food sources. Mutualism is where both animals will benefit. This can be seen where the oxpecker takes the parasites off the rhino and benefits from the food source, and the rhino gets kept clean. Commensalism is where an action affects one species negatively but does nothing to another. This can be seen in some species of small fish and sharks. The small fish gets food from what is left over from the shark, and the shark does not benefit but is also not harmed. Parasitism is where one benefits and the other one is harmed. This can be seen when a dog gets bitten by a tick. The tick benefits from the food source, but it hurts the dog in the process. What is sustainability? It's the concept where species are able to meet its needs without affecting the generations to come after. Organisms help each other out, which allows species to sustain for certain periods of time. It's what allows for life and the continuing growth of a certain species to be possible. It's the ability to sustain oneself for generations to come. What does environmental impact mean? Well, it's the impact that humans have on an environment. There are 4 different types of environmental impact. There's nature versus nature, which is the exchange between nature and nature, like the oxpecker and rhino situation I talked about previously. There's nature versus humans, which is like pollination and how it helps us to get food. There's humans versus humans, which is us interacting with another human, like going to the doctor or the dentist. And then there's humans versus nature, which could be like humans going to go and help an injured animal by taking them to the vet. Threatened species are affected by resource mining, waste disposal, and introduction of invasive species. Resource mining. Humans don't use sustainability. They take way more than they need to survive and waste so much, killing off species and taking away their resources. Over 50 billion animals are killed each year just for their coats. Medicine takes 1,328 rhinos just for their horns that are believed to have medicinal properties. 100 elephants are killed a day for their tusks to make piano keys because of the ivory in them. Dams are one example of resources that we use that affect animals. We use dams to collect and purify drinking water. It's a necessary resource for us to live However, the creation of this resource impacts the migration, feeding, and breeding of fish. Oil fracking is another example. It takes the oil from under the surface to use for cars and other machines. In doing so, lots of oil spills have been known to happen, injuring many animals. Logging has torn down forests and the homes of many animals, taking away their resources. Owls, bears, and so many others have been forced out of their homes for the betterment of human life. To create houses, we take away the houses of animals. Doesn't really sound right to me. Waste disposal. Pollution. Americans make about 10.5 million tons of plastic a year and only recycle 2% of it. The rest of it goes into the ocean. 14 million pounds of trash are thrown into the ocean a year. Fish choke on this because they swallow it thinking it's food. Plastic gets stuck around the necks of sea turtles, and oil spills from pumping oil have left many animals trapped in the gunk that has nowhere to go in the ocean but around in circles, since oil doesn't just go away. Not to mention the garbage patches that are just floating around in the ocean. These are created by the gyres in the ocean. However, due to the millions of pounds of garbage that is being dumped into the ocean, many animals die. The algal blooms thrive on sunlight and slow-moving water. And these gyres of pollution, and along the coast, it is the perfect slow speed for these algal blooms to create, making it very hard for the animals to breathe as it sucks the oxygen out of the water. And if you take a look at this chart, the plastic doesn't just disappear either. It takes 600 years for a fishing line to disappear, 450 years for a plastic bottle to dissolve, 450 years for a diaper, 200 years for an aluminum can, and 50 years for a styrofoam cup. Think of all the animals this is affecting in the process. Invasive species. Any living thing that grows, reproduces, and spreads at a more rapid rate than to be considered normal. Most invasive species are believed to have come from other countries, but they don't always have to. Take the lake trout, for example. They are from the Great Lakes, but in Wyoming they are considered to be an invasive species as they have taken over the population of the native trout in that area. They spread mainly because of human activities. Half of the time, we might not even know that we're participating in the transportation of invasive species. But through the rapid transportation of boats, planes, and cars, we have made it easy for them to transport. They can latch onto the boats, crawl into the crates, or get under cars as well. Although sometimes we do intentionally alter the ecosystems by introducing new species when we create different species by breeding or by bringing animals from all over the world to zoos or circuses and then they escape. Or even by wanting to own exotic pets can be another way of participating in the transportation of these species. As I mentioned before, the lake trout is one of the species that is considered to be an invasive species. I already described to you why they were considered to be an invasive species, but here is a picture so you can see what one of them would look like. Ever heard of the phrase "produce like rabbits"? Well, that would be because rabbits are some of the fastest reproducing animals in the world, making them one of the invasive species. Per litter, they can have 1 to 14 babies, with the average being 6. Because their gestation period is about a month, they can reproduce a new litter at least once a month. That's 6 babies times 12 months in a year, which equals 72 rabbits reproduced in a single year from just one rabbit. However, there are about 200 million wild rabbits currently running in the world. So 200 million times 72 equals about 14 billion rabbits. This means that, assuming that every rabbit reproduces, there will be a total of 14 billion rabbits reproduced by the end of the year. Now, if you thought that was a lot of rabbits, there are even more humans. There are currently about 7.7 billion humans in the world, with a little over about 400,000 born a day and 365 days in a year, not including the deaths of the human population, however. But there will be about 10.5 billion new humans by the end of the year. Endangered species. The loss of a species can have a huge impact on its ecosystem and on human populations. Ann Arbor from the University of Michigan states that the loss of a species could be just as bad as the effects of climate change. The University School of Natural Resources and Environment has been doing studies in this topic. They found that places where ecosystems are very diverse were thriving. Because of this, they were led to believe that those areas with habitat and species loss could reduce the amount of food, clean water, and constant climate. Many people just brush off the loss of a species, but the fact that this could possibly impact us and our world as much as global warming or pollution shows that the loss of a species is no small matter. Black rhinos are one of the endangered species. These rhinos are killed for their horns. Because of this, there are currently between 5,000 and 5,400 black rhinos left in the world. Although their numbers have doubled since their near extinction, they are still considered a critically endangered species. These black rhinos are one of the two different types of rhino species. They are all very important to their ecosystem they live in and to the world, as they are one of the oldest groups of mammals to still walk this planet. In their ecosystem, they are grazers. Due to the immense amount of plants they consume, they help keep the African landscape from overgrowing. This helps other animals as well. Their main threat is that of poaching. In order to protect them, many organizations have created conservation efforts. One company, the World Wildlife Foundation, has set up 3 conservation efforts in Namibia, Kenya, and South Africa. This comprises of about 87% of the black rhino population. Orangutans are also an endangered species. There are 3 different kinds of orangutans. There is Bornean, Sumatran, and the Tapanuli. Orangutans are killed for food or because they have destroyed crops. If a baby is found, they are often taken in as pets. Because of this, there are only 104,700 Bornean orangutans, 13,846 Sumatran orangutans, and 800 Tapanuli. Orangutans are often known as the gardeners of the forest. This is because they eat many berries, and the seeds that get left behind in their poop create new trees and plants. Once again, many companies have created conservation efforts for orangutans in order to save them. The company I mentioned before, the World Wildlife Foundation, also created secure and protective areas to connect as many orangutans as possible. The blue whale is not as endangered as the other 2 species, but is endangered nonetheless. There are approximately 10,000 to 25,000 blue whales left in the world. Boats tend to be a large problem for blue whales, along with climate change. Because climate change is affecting krill, the blue whale is even more vulnerable to extinction. Also, sound pollution. They get confused with the sounds the boats make, and if there are too many, they could lose their pod. Blue whales help to stabilize their ecosystem by consuming large amounts of fish and krill, regulating that population. Even after the whales die, their bodies provide much-needed nutrients to life on the ocean floor. There are many people working to protect blue whales. One of those, that I mentioned before, puts satellite tags on the whales and sees which routes they take the most in order to create the best protected areas. Methods for protecting species. Through the Endangered Species Act, it protects species from getting hurt or killed, protects their vital habitats, and comes up with plans to get their population back up. Zoos. They help animals get their population back up before releasing them into the wild. Botanical gardens. Do the same thing zoos do, but for plants. Gene banks hold the sperms, eggs, or embryos of endangered species in case of future reproduction is needed. This is done at the San Diego Zoo in California, along with several others. Reserves and national parks. They protect endangered species from being hunted. Moral questions. In this section, I decided to play a little bit of devil's advocate. Moral questions that come up when considering the way we impact our environment are zoos. Even though they help animals recover, they are also putting them in small cages versus the wild. So the question is it better to leave the animals in captivity or let them live out the rest of their lives free in the wild? Another question is, by using gene banks, we are saving the animals, but they didn't give us the consent to experiment on them and poke and prod them with needles. They don't even know what's happening. So is it right to experiment on them, even though it might save them in the long run? As humans, we talk about saving the environment and reducing the invasive species, but we are the most invasive species of all. So is it really right for us to reduce the invasive species? Humans create a lot of trash, so what are we supposed to do with it? We can't recycle it all. If we don't dump our trash in the ocean, then where are we supposed to dump it? Another question is, we blow up mountains and pull up oil and build dams all for the betterment of the human race, but it is seriously affecting the lives of so many animals. So is it morally okay to take away another living thing's resources just to better your own? In conclusion, I believe that it is okay to leave animals in the zoo as long as they are released as soon as possible. I believe that we should only use needles on animals if it's going to save their life, that as the top predator on any food chain, we should help figure out a way to coexist with the invasive species before deciding to kill them, because there are more of us than them anyway. I believe that we should take care of our earth, recycle, and figure out ways to be more sustainable as a population. I believe we should protect the endangered species instead of killing them, and if we eat them, We should use as much of the animal as possible. I don't think that it's okay for us to destroy nature's resources just to get our own. It's just not right.